Today I am going to discuss with you about the types of data. If I explain, the objective of today's video is to present what are the types of data. So at the end of this video, you should be able to answer for this question. What are the types of data? Then more than that, you should be able to express the importance of identifying the types of data and what are the applicable analysis techniques. In analysis, what is the thing we have to do? We have to make some special arrangement for time series variables. Let's move to cross section. This is the second mode we can have under the types of data. What mean by that? Cross sectional data are data on one or more variables collected at a single point in time. Such data do not have a meaningful sequence. For example, the data might be on sales on 30 companies, productivity of each sales deviation, farmers' production and productivity in a particular farming season. Okay, if we are taking the data at a single point of time. That single point may be a month, a day, an hour, likewise. We can adjust what is that point, but anyway, we are not going through the time. We are selected a considering time period. At that time, we are collecting all data, so we called it as cross-sectional data. If I give you an real example, suppose about the population and housing census in your country. They are taken in my country. Normally, they are taken about a month. So that month is the single point of time. That is the way of taking cross-sectional data. That is not about parallel to the time. We are taking a point of time. Okay, here I have brief. What are the characteristic time series data versus cross-sectional data? Time series data is a set of observations collected at usually equal spaced time interval. The cross-sectional data are observations at coming from different individuals or groups at a single point of time. That's the thing I explained through the last two slides. Time series data usually follows one object change over the course of time. Cross-sectional data refers to data collected by observing many objectives such as individual, firms or countries at the same point of time. Then that's the thing. If I explain it in detail, if we consider one variable, we can collect only about one thing. But at the cross-sectional data, we can have some point of time, some points to study. That's the thing. Then in a time series variable, there is one objective that's changed through the time, but we are taking the objective in cross-sectional at the point. It focuses on results gained over an extended period of time, often within a small area. It focuses on information received for services and opinion at a particular time in various locations depending on information sought. Then here we need some time, and that may be a specific area, but here we can have more areas and we can have the variation inside of those areas also at the same point of time. Okay, here it has given some example. Under the time series, the daily closing price of a certain stock records over the last 6 weeks is an example for time series data. Then what is the time period they have considered? They have considered last 6 weeks. They have considered about the daily closing price of certain stock records. They are taking the certain price of stock records over 6 weeks of time. Then let's consider about the example cross-section. The closing price of a group of 20 different stocks on 15 December 1986. This would be an example of cross-sectional data. They are taking this day as their time point, and they are considering about 20 different groups of stocks. Then they are considering about the closing price of those 20 companies in that given day. But they are considered in about 6 weeks, that is about time series. They are taking everyday values within these 6 weeks, but here it's only about 1 day. But there are 20 companies. Okay, let's see what mean by the panel. When I'm presenting the last slide, you may have a question. I don't know whether it raise, but there is a possibility to raise a question like this. Can't we use these two things together? If I go for the last example, can't we study about these 20 companies within the 6 weeks period? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you raise that kind of a question, you are correct. We can study. Then that type of data we cannot study through the cross-sectional data analysis technique or time series data analysis technique. Here there are a special kind of analysis technique for those kind of analysis technique, that's about panel data. The panel data, we are normally that kind of longitudinal data set we are we called it as a panel data set. So if we have some cross-sectional set through some period of time, with respect to, there are cross-sectional and time series both characteristic of data in a given data set, that is called a panel data set. Let's move to the slide. A panel data set contains observation of multiple entries where each entry is observed at 2 or more points in time. Okay, then there is a cross-sectional individuals and there are some times also. There are some examples. Data on 520 California school district in 1999 and again 2000 for 140 observations total. Then if we consider about these 2 years, in 1990 also we are taking this amount, 120 data from the schools in district, and again in 2000 also we are taking the same amount of data set. So in 19 data point and 20, they all together there are maybe 840 observations we have. Okay, data on US status. Each state is observed in 3 years, for the total is 150. So if we are taking 50 by for each year, there are 3 years, ultimately we will have 150 observations. Data on 100 individual in 4 different months, we will have at the end 400. Okay, why do we use this panel data? We should know what are the reasons for use this kind of thing. First one, panel data can take explicit count of individual specific heterogeneity. Individuals here means related to the micro unit. Okay, the second point is, by combining data in 2 dimensions, panel data gives more data variation, less collinearity and more degrees of freedom. Then the third point is, panel data is better suited than cross-sectional data for studying the dynamic of changes. For example, it is well suited to understanding transition behavior, for example company bankruptcy and merger. Okay, then if I brief about it again, we can collect more data than the studies in cross-sectional of time series separately. If the situation is more sweet for the panel, if we have to take the cross-sectional and time series both, we can gather more information into our analysis. We can make more dynamics, we can collect more variations into our study. So we can study about some transition through the time as well as in the society as a cross-section. Okay, that's the ultimate objective of using panel data, but this is not important at every time. We should be aware about what is the place we are using this kind of data. That's why I explain 3 types together here. Okay, here I have again summarized what I discussed with you: the time series data, cross-sectional data, and panel data. Okay, then if I brief about the analysis technique with respect to these things, I think all of you know aware about the regression. We can use regression for these all, but the form is somewhat different. If you use regression with time series data, before moving to that technique, you should check this variable as stationary or not. Then you will raise a question, what mean by this stationary? The checking stationary is the first stage of analyzing time series data. So you can learn what mean by that and what are the techniques of time series analysis later through my video. Cross-sectional data, we can directly apply cross-sectional data, but there are some assumptions. If I take an example, a regression analysis, I think you all know there may be some simple linear regression and multiple linear regressions, but before go for the technique, we need to make some assumptions. So there are 10, 11, 12 assumptions. We need to prove whether these assumptions are fulfilling in our data set. If we are violating that assumptions, we cannot apply. You can have a good idea and you can have a well awareness about those things later through my video. Okay, panel data also in like that way we have to make some adjustments in the data set, and you need to check whether it's applicable for statistical analysis or not. Then we can apply that data set. That techniques also you can study through a video in my channel. Okay, to keep this everything touch, you can subscribe the channel and make notifications and make like for the videos. Then you can understand it later. Okay, thank you so much for being with the video, and we